Hello to you all. We are really sad that we cannot be with you in person today, so instead we have put together this short film to give you a flavour of our plans for the EFI 2019 conference. My name is Alison Hester and I'm one of the conference organising team. We're all looking forward very much to welcoming you to Aberdeen next year. This short film has been put together by ourselves here at the James Hutton Institute, combining some of our own photos with movie clips kindly given to us by Visit Aberdeenshire. So here we go. Aberdeen, sometimes called the Granite City, is the largest city in the north of Scotland. It was built on a wealth of natural resources, with farming and fishing driving the expansion of the city in the 19th century, and then oil and gas in the 20th century. It is a major regional hub with 2 universities and several research institutes, including our own James Hutton Institute, which is co-hosting this conference with the Aberdeen Exhibition and Conference Centre. The diverse rural land use of Aberdeenshire includes intensive farming, extensive upland grazing, commercial plantation forestry, native pine and broadleaf woodlands, hunting estates, and land also managed primarily for conservation. In the west of Aberdeenshire there is also the Cairngorms National Park, which is the largest national park in the UK. Compared to most other parts of Europe, forestry in Scotland and in the UK is generally rather different. Let me give you a flavour of this. Scotland has suffered from many centuries of natural forest decline, with cutting, burning and grazing being the prime causes. So by 1900, Scotland only had 5% of its forest cover remaining, and imported timber was therefore essential, and it was very common. Even the 17th century castles of Aberdeenshire were fitted out with Baltic pine and not UK pine. In the early 19th century, plant collectors such as David Douglas brought tree seed from Northwest America for large private landowners, and some of these experimented with exotic tree species for timber. But it didn't have very much impact on the overall tree cover here in Scotland. The high populations of sheep and wild deer continued to restrict our woodland regeneration, and the overall forest area remained seriously small. The perils of Scotland's tiny forestry sector were actually then exposed in the 2 world wars, when the timber reserves were used up and the country was running out of timber. These timber shortages were addressed in a major post-war government report that gave birth to the UK Forestry Commission in 1919, and their priority was to plant a strategic reserve of timber, and the Forestry Commission was given wide-ranging powers in order to acquire land and plant trees, and this continued for many decades. But although this so-called strategic reserve of forestry argument was actually dropped in the late 1950s, private forestry was being increasingly supported, and the UK tax system encouraged privately owned plantation forestry, some of it with very disastrous silvicultural consequences, such as in some of our internationally important peatlands. So this small summary that I've given you here explains why so much of the productive forest in Scotland is in plantations of fast-growing exotic tree species. From the 1980s, things changed here in Scotland. There were new ideas and new laws, and these drove a move towards more environmentally responsible forestry. There were new grants for private owners to plant more native tree species, to create forests and woodlands that delivered higher levels of public goods. And farmers were also encouraged to plant more trees on their land. Initially this was to reduce food surpluses, but later carbon sequestration and other environmental benefits came up high on the agenda. So the emergence of thinking first around public goods and then about ecosystem services and natural capital has brought environmental concerns high up the priority list now for modern plantation forestry here. And some of the forests of today are very different indeed, even from 20 years ago. So here in North East Scotland we have examples of both extremes and everything in between. We have traditional intensive plantation forestry with timber as its primary focus, and we also have multifunctional environmental forestry with conservation and environment as its primary focus. So these extremes encapsulate the contemporary dilemmas which face forest planners and forest policy, not just here in Scotland, but across many other parts of the world too. The Scottish Government has taken a keen interest in forestry for many years. New laws have just been passed and a new forestry strategy is about to be produced, so this will give us much to reflect on and debate. And this conference is very timely for us here in Scotland, and it'll be absolutely fantastic to share some of this important debate with all of you who come to join us here at the conference. We're putting together an exciting and a diverse programme together with the EFI team, and we will explore together how these different styles of forestry contribute to ecosystem services and how they deliver wider societal benefits. We will discuss the choices that confront contemporary land managers, and we will also engage with the challenges facing those who design forest policy. All these issues will be at the forefront of our conference, and they will inform the debate about delivering multiple ecosystem benefits from forests in Europe and elsewhere in the world. We are also delighted to announce that we will hold this EFI 2019 conference alongside the Institute of Chartered Foresters, which will bring you into close contact with the UK forestry practice community as well. Thanks for your attention, and we look forward to welcoming you to Aberdeen in September 2019.